Good morning, my dears. A very cold morning here. One of our crew here, we have three red American squirrels, American red squirrels they're called. And one of them I can see, if I lean forwards, I can see him. He spends a lot of time in a large round bird feeder that I hang from a fir tree here, from a hemlock. It's about 10 inches in diameter, and he gets in there, which the grey squirrels can't, because the holes are too small for the grey squirrels. He gets in there, and he's been in there the last 2 hours. He often spends the whole morning, especially if the sun is shining, basking. I don't know why you need to know this. I think it has nothing to do with John Wilmot, Earl of Rochester, but just to situate you where I am, and both in its sights and sounds. You will hear the sounds, I'm afraid, almost certainly, of our workmen, which you heard if you tuned in to the video I sent out yesterday. They're in our house knocking down an interior wall with much bee buzzing of saws and banging in of nails. So, to the good Earl himself, I don't know that I want to necessarily read you sections from the play. I don't know if there's a censor built into YouTube where there are words you must not use. Presumably not. You can use any words you like. But I don't propose to stretch that. You can see for yourselves how many bad words are assembled in one place in this play, whether or not it was actually written by Johnny Wilmot himself. I dare say we shall never know until somebody does a really convincing verbal analysis of Wilmot's works and compares it to the vocabulary and the phrasing in Sodom. I read of the existence of this play at some point, maybe in my teenage years, I forget when. But it was made very clear that it was not available on the open market, or even the closed market, whatever that might be. And it wasn't until I found myself teaching in the Ivy League, teaching at Cornell, that I realized that most universities have a special documents section in their library, and I'd never taken advantage of that, and never thought that there would be anything fearfully exciting in there, and indeed I was quite right. But when I got into the special section, whatever it was called, or is called, at Cornell, I found, to my great excitement, there was a copy of Sodom. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the much sought-after pearl of pornography. So I sat down and was chuckling away and got hold of a piece of paper and made some notes. And I think the thing I remember taking note of was the entire cast list, over which I haven't cast an eye now for 30 years, but as I remember it, the thing that stuck in my mind, one of the cast of Sodom, it says, is described as the brothers Balls, 2 hangers-on. I thought this was felicitous on the part of the Earl, or whoever it is that wrote Sodom. It was generally understood by, if not his peers, his contemporaries, but by, I would say, a majority of the commentators, since they feel it has... who else would have written it? I remember reading as the final desperate conclusion of some literary critic. Who else could you imagine having written such a thing? I don't know. Almost anybody, possibly. It is fun. And I thought this is something that I mentioned, I believe, in yesterday in our Zoom meeting, but that means that there are 7 possibly of you who might be watching this but didn't attend the Zoom and haven't been attending the Zooms but mysteriously have been watching these videos. I doubt it somehow, but just in case, I wouldn't want you to feel excluded if you decided, yes, you were going to keep going with the syllabus as prescribed and take a look at Sodom. Yes, as I say that, it suddenly occurs to me that I've never really known why sodomy and Sodom are connected. That unfortunate city that, along with Gomorrah, shows you had a Christian upbringing, were reduced to ash for their crimes, which maybe consisted of sodomy. Was sodomy the singular crime of the city of Sodom? I've never known. I've never known who to ask, or, to be honest, felt any urgency about asking until this moment. As my wife has come to tell me,
are you teaching?
Am I teaching? This is my students might disagree, but this is a video I'm making. Yes, but he'll still be in bed. Remember, it's 3 hours earlier there. My wife is wisely reminding me to phone my stepbrother, who lives in California, and will probably not be up at 6:35 a.m., but I must do it. So here you are, part of my ordinary everyday doings and failings to do. So Sodom, I mentioned yesterday, I wanted to put on a syllabus. This is the first and possibly only time I shall ever do it, having discovered that it's available online. And there was this great sense of having penetrated the holy of holies of obscene books in the Cornell special documents. It's probably not called special documents, I don't know what it's called. In the library, special little private special library at Cornell that contains such things. But then it really never occurred to me that the internet had liberated so much, and it has. And to my astonishment, there was dear old Sodom as naked as the day is long, and no problem finding it or reading it. Anybody, a child of 6, could read it. I don't know what a child of 6 would make of it, but anyway, having discovered that, I thought, oh my gosh, perhaps I could invite a class to take a look at it, since once I heard of it when I was, probably your age, probably undergraduate age, I thought, well, I'd like to have a look at that, see what that's about. Well, here it is. And what it's about is the rebellion of King Boloxinion with his general Bagaranthos against the queen and her beautiful minions. They're going to go off and go to it, as the Elizabethans put it, with other men and boys, and they're going to liberate themselves from the power, the rule of women, which I don't think they do at all successfully in the play, because there are 3 epilogues and they're all spoken by women, and they're very much ha 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 epilogues, and one of them contains one of those epilogues contains 4 lines I wrote down because I thought they were rather lovely. Then they go, men, when they're spent, are like some piece of wood or an insipid thing, though flesh and blood, whilst we are still desirous of more, and valiantly dare challenge 1/2 score, a score being 20, so we'll take on 10 any time. And the point is at the heart of much sexology, and presumably when the good Dr. Ruth, I don't know if you know who I mean by that, an elderly lady who advises people on sex and has been very successful in so doing, even though she's a dear little old lady. Not, I don't know who you think of as the ideal person to go to. We had a very beautiful postgraduate student studying at Brooklyn College. I don't know how long ago, 20 years ago maybe, and to my amazement and terror and disbelief, I found that she actually was a sex therapist. I thought, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Is that a good idea? Maybe it's a wonderful idea. Dr. Ruth is not that, but she is clearly an expert. And into her purview, into her world, nothing to do with perving, enters the fact that traditionally, and maybe simply physiologically, no argument about it, women are capable of taking on more men for their pleasure than men are capable of taking on women. We men are exhausted by a limited number of orgasms. I was going to say one, but that would perhaps seem too modest. Like you might be thinking, poor professor, is that really as much as he has known of pleasure in his lifetime? But certainly the commonly held belief is that women can go on and on enjoying orgasmic pleasure, which seems very unfair, and it doesn't seem at all surprising if men rebel against this and think, how dare you outdo us in pleasure? Nor does it seem surprising if in the battle of the sexes based on the obtaining of physical pleasure that women would win, as they clearly do in John Wilmot's play, if he wrote it. Anyway, it's a very entertaining, funny play in which the women quite rightly win. Wilmot himself was an interesting fellow, wild, outrageous, smashed the room. He was the first great rock star. He caused great damage, and he offended people everywhere he went, and he was drunk as a lord, and he was a lord. He was drunk all day, and when he needed to get back into the good graces of King Charles II, his friend and sovereign, he would go out to war, to battle, in the navy particularly, and perform wonders of heroism, rowing from ship to ship, bringing news from the flagship to the other ships. You would have thought that flags would do that. That's why it's called the flagship. But never mind, out went Wilmot and bravely survived under the enemy fire, and Charles loved him for that. So he knew how to get his sovereign's favour back. Wilmot's father Henry had saved a famous incident, had saved the life of King Charles II's father. No, he saved the life. Yes, I think he saved the life of one of that lot. Anyway, he'd saved the life of a Stuart king who hid in a tree, famously during the English Civil War. Not famously enough for me to remember the details, I'm afraid, but it was a famous incident, and it endeared the Wilmot family. I guess he was made Earl of Rochester as a result of his noble deed in saving a Stuart a head temporarily, because after all, it was a head that went missing from the Stuart line and caused the Civil War. It wasn't the head, the execution, that caused the Civil War, but it was felt to be necessary by the anti-royalist forces in the English Civil War to execute the king who was trying to bring in outsiders to reclaim his throne for him. So Henry Wilmot had endeared himself to the Stuart line of royals, and the fondness passed on to John, the poet, wit, and playwright, who roundly abused the king, who he described once as having never said a bad thing and never done a good one. And the king, God bless him, said, that's absolutely right, because what I say is my own, what I do is done by my ministers on my behalf. So he was a smart, witty fellow himself, King Charles, and the Earl of Rochester was the jewel in his crown, in terms of drunkenness, outrageousness, promiscuity, with men and women, I gather, reading now a little bit, which I didn't realise. I had thought Charles was all about his mistresses, but maybe not only that. Anyway, there was a lot of promiscuity, and you can read a humorous account of it in his play Sodom, if you don't mind reading a lot of bad words. And then you will get, as I mentioned in our Zoom meeting, an opportunity to compare French and English pornography, French and English ways in matters of the mind and the body. The French, I think, rather serious and philosophical. The English, comical. We've always been comedians, it seems, I'm glad to say. It's a tradition that I think is one to be proud of. So enjoy, please, by all means, if you're going to dip into it, if that's all you're going to do. But I hope you take pleasure in it, and I hope you're staying warm on this freezing day in the forest. Bye now.